if you look at the fact that 50% of the stories of the Quran take place in Africa, and if they don't take place in Africa, a lot of the stories have significant African characters in them, such as Suleiman's wife Bilqis, who comes from East Africa to Jerusalem to visit him, or Prophet Ibrahim's wife Hajar, who's also ancient Egyptian, that marries him and settles in Mecca later on. That kind of signifies that Africa has a place in Islamic history. And then looking at figures in the Quran themselves. So I looked at, for example, Adam, Musa, and Isa, just as case studies. Adam is Abul Bashar, the father of humanity. Allah, when speaking about the creation of Adam, the famous verse that we always talk about is Inni ja'ilun fil ardi khalifa. We're placing a representative on the earth, etc., etc. There's also another verse in the Quran where Allah says, Inni khaliqun basharun min salsalin min hama'in masnun. I'm creating a man from black mud that was molded into shape. To understand the Quran, you have to go to the tafsir. All of the major mufassirin, Tabari, Qurtubi, Baydawi, Baghawi, Jawhari, like Jalaluddin Suyuti and Mahali in Tafsir Jalalain, when they discuss this verse, they all say, Hama in Masnun is a black mud. Some of them even go as far as saying it's a mud that is either black already, or they leave it until it becomes black, and then they create something from it. So one of I think it was Baydawi or Baghawi, he said, a lot of people say Allah fermented the mud that Adam was created from and left it until it became black and then created Adam from it. And then Jawhari in his tafsir, he says, a lot of people say the reason why Adam was named Adam was because he was Adam alone, Adam in complexion. So what does Adam mean? Go to Lisan al-Arab, the first Arabic lexicon and the most widely referenced Arabic lexicon. They say Adam means black. And when somebody's darker than Asmar, which is dark brown, like our color, they're described as Adam alone, or Adam Shadid al-Adma, like they're very, very dark skinned. So the usage of this word to describe the first human, and it also correlates with science because we know the first human beings were found in Africa and they were black people, and the black genes are not recessive. So any other nations will derive themselves from that, but they can't, the scientific aspect of it. So already just from that, the fact that there are over 10 traditional mainstream tafasir that state or propose that Adam was black, that's knowledge that's within our books that people don't know about. A lot of people study and they'd never even heard of these things. And until you go to the tafsir itself, it's something that's not highlighted because it's not seen as important. But it was important enough for those scholars to include it in their tafsir. 100%. So, alhamdulillah. Then Musa, we have a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ is describing different prophets. So he says, for example, Ibrahim, if you want to know what Ibrahim looked like, look at your companion, talking about himself, meaning he's the one that looks the most like Ibrahim. Then he speaks about Musa, وَأَمَّا مُوسَى فَرَجُلٌ Adam. He was a dark-skinned man. And then he talks about him having curly hair as well. And then, going back to the Quran even, one of the miracles of Musa, أَسْلُكِ يَدُكَ فِي جَيْبُكَ تَخْرُجُ بَيْضَاءَ مِنْ غَيْرِ سُوءٍ. If you put your hand into your pocket or underneath your armpit, when it comes out, it will be bayda, it will be white. If he wasn't non-white in the first place, that wouldn't have been a miracle. And so when you look at the tafsirs, Tabari says, وَأَمَّا مُوسَى فِيمَا ذَكَرْ لَنَا كَانَ Adam. Musa was, according to what we were told, Adam in complexion, the same as the original Adam. He was a black man. And so his changing color, his hand changing color was made a miracle for him. And all of the other mufassirin, when they talk about this ayah, they say the same thing. And then they quote some of them, the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ talking about him to confirm this. Isa, same thing. So there's different ahadith. Some say he's Ahmar, light skin. Some of them say he's Adam. But Ibn Umar, the son of Umar bin al-Khattab, says, Wallahi. And you know, when they said Wallahi, it meant something. Serious, He said, Wallahi, the Prophet ﷺ never said he was Ahmar. But he said that I had a vision of 3 men doing tawaf of the Kaaba. The man in the middle was Adam. He was dark-skinned with long curly hair. And when I asked who he was, I was told that he was Isa ibn Maryam. So those are the father of humanity, the father of the Judaic tradition, the father of the Christian tradition. Well, not the direct father, but the main figures of all of these traditions. all described as black men by the Quran itself, or by the Sahaba, by the Prophet ﷺ, or by the Sunnah. And even if you look at Umar bin al-Khattab as well, because I go into, from the Quran, I go into black Sahaba beyond Bilal. So we've all watched the Omar series. Omar series looks, if you look at it, Omar looks like, you know, what your stereotypical light-skinned Arab person would look like. But when you go into the books, you realize that his grandfather, Nufail bin Abdul Uzza, was half Ethiopian and half Arab. Wow. And then he had his son, Al-Khattab, with an Ethiopian woman. So Umar bin Al-Khattab's father, Al-Khattab bin Nufail bin Abdul Uzza, was 3/4 Ethiopian and 1/4 Arab. So the way Omar looks in the NBC series is probably not how he looked in real life. And you have similar narrations with Ali ibn Abi Talib. He's described as Adam, Shadidul Adma as well. He's described as dark skin, and others. And then I speak about black Sahaba that are not mentioned aside from Bilal. So there are other Habashis there aside from Bilal. Yeah. The Sahaba that spent the most time with the Prophet ﷺ from the day he was born until the day he passed away, Ayman, who he referred to as his mother, Ummi Ba'da Ummi, my mother after my mother, who raised him as her own child from the age of 6 when he was in the house of his uncle and his grandfather, was an Ethiopian woman. Bilal's mother, who was a princess, Hamama, was also there as a Sahaba. Salim, one of the freed slaves of Abu Hudayfa, he was one of the Quran teachers for the Sahaba, and he used to lead the Sahaba in Salah, in military expeditions. Sumayya, the first martyr, and there's a list of about, I think, 30 Sahaba that I mentioned that were black Sahaba that were there in the time of the Prophet ﷺ that nobody really speaks about. And even the fact that the first openly practicing Muslim community wasn't established in Mecca or Medina, but was established in Africa, in Ethiopia, under Najashi. That was the first time Muslims were allowed to practice Islam openly and freely. And at that time, Mecca didn't accept Islam, and Medina didn't even exist. But on the shores of Africa, we had a Muslim community. So the story of Islam as we know it today starts in Africa even. So all of that, I kind of wrap it in the first half of the presentation. Wow. And then the rest of it goes into the history of Islam in West Africa, because most black Muslims are West African descent in the Americas and in Africa. And we have nations such as, for example, Nigeria has nearly 100 million Muslims, more than the whole of the Arabian Peninsula. Wow. And that's just one country from Africa's 54 countries, or, well, the numbers always change. But yeah, 50-something nations in Africa. Just one of them has more Muslims than the whole of the Arabian Peninsula combined. Wow. And I talk about how Islam entered there, because when black people go to masjids or when black people enter certain spaces, people assume they recently come into Islam. When we have reports from northeast Nigeria that they accepted Islam from emissaries sent by Omar bin Abdul Aziz. That's in the 8th century. We have